for me to be here for a single purpose, and that is to lend solidarity to your struggle, this battle, from the people of Greece. We're not here in Britain in order to seek your solidarity. We're here to give our solidarity to you, because the battle is international. You are fighting a magnificent and very hard one, very difficult battle against a ticking clock. I know what that means. I was negotiating on behalf of a country against the ticking clock. 30th of June, I knew they would shut our banks down in order to suffocate us, which is exactly what they did. But this is one battle in a world war. And just to give you an indication of that, which I think somehow connects with what is happening here, I'll just tell you just a short story, which I think is quite telling. I was negotiating with the International Monetary Fund on VAT, Greek VAT. One of the great problems we have in Greece is that VAT is too high, but few people pay it, either because they can't afford it or because they're tax evaders who can get away with it. So I won't bore you with the details. It was a very intense negotiation. It lasted 12 hours and ended up in the lobby of a hotel with me and Christine Lagarde and Paul Thompson, when we shook hands and we agreed to reduce VAT from 23% to 18% and increase collectability. Why am I saying all this to you? Because we shook hands, we had a drink, a glass of whiskey, 3 in the morning in an awful hotel in Brussels. And then I flew back, and my task was to convince my cabinet that this was the right way of going. It wasn't terribly easy. I took a week to convince them, we convinced them, then I sent my team of negotiators to Brussels in order to seal the deal regarding this small part of a very broad negotiation. Okay? And I get a telephone call from Brussels. My chief negotiator says, they are not going for it. I said, what do you mean? We've shaken hands. No, they are insisting on 24%. And I thought, what? You know, I was naive enough to think that if you shake hands with the head of the IMF, there is some meaning to this. And 2 days later, I came across Paul Thompson, the number 2 in the IMF, with whom we had shaken hands. And this was in a corridor. Right? He was trying to avoid my gaze. What's this business? We settled on an 18%. Okay, now the connection with what you're experiencing comes in. He said to me, yeah, we agreed. Yeah, we'll do it. Will you give me labor relations? And by that, what he meant was annulling every single collective bargaining agreement in the country, banning trade unions from negotiating collective agreements in the future, reducing minimum wage by 42%, and ensuring that all impediments to mass dismissals are removed. So this is why I'm saying this is a world war. This is the International Monetary Fund. It has the audacity to go to a small country in the throes of a Great Depression and demand higher tax rates and the removal of workers' rights. Now, what is the narrative that has been happening, doing the rounds since Thatcher, regarding the rationale for removing workers' rights and beating trade unions into a pulp? Competitiveness, lower wage costs that somehow will increase jobs or create jobs and revive the economy. That's the Thatcherite dream. Now, use Greece as an example of why this is rubbish. Because we did this in Greece. Not we, it was imposed upon us. We were beaten into a pulp, much more so than the British working class was. Let me just give you some examples. Wages fell by 45%, pensions by 46%. We had, as I just said, the complete removal of trade unions' rights. Trade unions exist only on paper in Greece now. And especially when you have a combination of these pieces of legislation and the Great Depression, it is very hard to organize labor. Everybody's so decentralized. There are people who work for 300 euros a month, pretending to be part-time. They work full-time, and they're so scared in doing something about it, and the trades unions simply cannot get them to speak up. There's no voice involved. And if you combine the legislative assault on labor with the Great Depression, that's what you get. And what was the result? Labor is now almost cheaper than under slavery in Greece, because the lords and the slave drivers had to feed the workers. They had to provide shelter for them. Now in Greece, they don't even need to do that. We have 600,000 workers in Greece, out of a population of a mere 10 million, who haven't been paid for 8 months. And they keep reporting to work in the hope that they will get something of the arrears that they're owed. Because they know that if they drop out, and if they don't report to work the next day, their chances of getting anything are finished. So, and what happened to employment? Well, it went down by 32%. So wages come down, labor costs came down, and jobs disappeared. So the argument that they're doing all this in order to revive the labor market and have workers work for less but have more jobs, that's rubbish. It really doesn't work like that. It never has worked anywhere in the world. It will not work here. It didn't work in Greece. Just know that. Know it in your bones. Don't let them make you believe that there might be some logic, however distorted it might be in their head. There is no such logic. So, I've got a message for you, because I was speaking to some comrades in Athens this morning, just before we boarded the train, and I told them that I'm coming to the National Gallery to speak to people, to comrades who are fighting for effectively decency. Right? I mean, from what I've heard, this is a question of decency here. This is not an economic issue. It's a question of power. Just like in my dealings with the IMF and the European Central Bank, I realized it's got nothing to do with economics. They don't give a damn about reforms. They don't care about the economy, about macroeconomic indicators, about austerity. This is all about power. It's about putting good people down just because they can. That's my interpretation of what's been happening. So the message I've been asked to convey to you is very simple. If those who run the National Gallery cannot appreciate the real people that make the National Gallery tick, they are not fit people to look after the treasures that are in their custody. And if the National Gallery at the heart of London cannot safeguard decent working conditions for the people working there, then Britain's integrity is imperiled. Thank you.
Yeah.